Picture this, you wake up one morning in your bed. Everything looks normal. Your room, your house, your body, it all looks exactly the same. But something is fundamentally horrifyingly wrong. You look at your hands and you know, with absolute unshakable certainty, that you are dead. Not dying, not sick, dead. You are a walking corpse. Your heart isn't really beating. Your blood isn't really flowing. You are already deceased, but somehow still moving, still thinking, trapped in a body that should be rotting in a grave. You try to tell people, your family, your friends, doctors, but they don't believe you. They say you're alive, that you're breathing, that your heart is beating, but you know the truth. You can feel it, the emptiness, the absence of life. You are dead, and everyone around you is lying or mistaken. Some days you're convinced your organs have stopped working. Other days you believe you're decomposing from the inside out, and on the worst days you're certain you don't even exist at all, that you're nothing, a void, a ghost haunting a body that was once yours. This isn't a horror movie. This isn't psychosis or schizophrenia. This is Cotard syndrome, a rare neurological condition where people genuinely completely believe they are dead, and it's real, documented, studied, and absolutely terrifying. This is the story of the walking dead, not zombies, but real people trapped in a nightmare where they're convinced their own existence has ended, and what makes it even more disturbing is that some of them are partially right. Let me take you back to 1880, to Paris, France. A neurologist named Jules Cotard is treating a patient, a 43-year-old woman he calls Mademoiselle X. She's been brought to him because she's saying impossible things. She claims she has no brain, no nerves, no chest, no stomach, no intestines. She says she's just skin and bones holding together a body that no longer exists. And most disturbingly, she insists she doesn't need to eat because dead people don't need food. Cotard examines her. Physically she's fine. Her brain is working, her organs function, but psychologically she's convinced she's dead. She refuses to eat, she stops bathing, she says there's no point, you don't feed or wash a corpse, and she has a strange wish, she wants to be buried, not because she wants to die, but because she believes she's already dead, and her body should be in the ground where it belongs. Cotard has never seen anything like this. He starts documenting the case, interviewing her, trying to understand what's happening in her mind. And as he studies her, he realizes this isn't depression. It's not psychosis in the traditional sense. It's something else, a specific delusion where the patient denies their own existence or the existence of their body parts. He names it le délire de négation, the delirium of negation. Today we call it Cotard syndrome, or Cotard's delusion, and Mademoiselle X is just the first documented case. Over the next 140 years, doctors will encounter more patients with this bizarre, horrifying condition. So what is Cotard syndrome? At its core, it's a rare neurological disorder, where people believe, with absolute conviction, that they are dead, don't exist, are rotting or have lost their blood, organs or body parts. It exists on a spectrum. Some patients think specific body parts are gone, others believe they're entirely dead, and in the most severe cases, patients believe they don't exist at all, a condition called nihilistic delusion. Imagine trying to convince someone they exist when they're certain they don't. It's not like arguing about facts, it's arguing about their fundamental reality, and no amount of evidence, mirrors, photographs, medical tests showing their heart beating, can convince them otherwise. Because from their perspective, all of that is somehow false or irrelevant. Let me tell you about some real cases. In 1996, a 48-year-old Scottish man named Graham was treated for Cotard syndrome. Graham had suffered severe depression after an electrical accident. Months after the accident, he began telling his family he was dead, not dying, dead. His brain was dead, he said. He was just a body going through motions. His mother took him on a trip to South Africa to prove he was alive. She thought showing him new places, new experiences would snap him out of it. But the trip made things worse. Graham looked at the vibrant landscapes, the animals, the people, and concluded, this must be hell. I'm dead and this is the afterlife. That's why everything feels wrong. Doctors scanned Graham's brain using PET imaging. What they found was shocking. The metabolic activity in Graham's brain was extremely low, so low it resembled the brain activity of someone in a vegetative state or under anesthesia. The parts of his brain responsible for emotions, self-awareness, and processing reality were barely functioning. In a very real sense, Graham's brain was partially dead even though he was walking and talking. This gave researchers a crucial insight. Cotard syndrome might be caused by damage or dysfunction in specific brain regions, particularly the frontal and parietal lobes. These areas handle self-awareness, body perception, and emotional processing. When they malfunction, the brain can't properly recognize itself as alive and functioning. The patient feels disconnected from their body and emotions, and their brain rationalizes this disconnection by concluding, "I must be dead." Another case, a woman in her 50s went to the hospital, claiming her organs were rotting. She could smell it, she said, the putrid scent of decay coming from inside her body. She begged doctors to remove her organs or let her die, because she couldn't stand being a walking corpse. Medical tests showed nothing wrong, but she was convinced. She could feel the decay. She stopped eating, stopped drinking, saying rotting corpses don't need sustenance. Doctors tried everything: antipsychotics, antidepressants, therapy. Nothing worked. She remained convinced she was decomposing from the inside. Eventually, electroconvulsive therapy (ECT), controlled electric shocks to the brain, partially helped. After several sessions, her delusion weakened. She started accepting that maybe, possibly, she was alive. But the conviction never fully disappeared. Even years later, she'd have moments where she'd doubt her existence. Here's what makes Cotard syndrome so disturbing. It's not just feeling dead inside like severe depression. Depression makes people feel hopeless, empty, worthless. Cotard's makes people believe they literally, physically, are corpses. They look at their beating heart and think it's an illusion. They see their reflection and think it's a trick. Their brain has rewritten reality itself. And it gets stranger. Some Cotard's patients develop what doctors call immortality delusion, a paradoxical belief that because they're already dead they cannot die. They become reckless, taking dangerous risks because they think, what's the point of safety when you're already deceased? Some have walked into traffic, jumped from heights, or refused all medical treatment for life-threatening conditions because dead people can't be killed. One patient in Japan became convinced he was dead after a motorcycle accident. He stopped eating, stopped caring for himself, and started wandering the streets at night, saying he was a ghost. When police found him weeks later, he was severely malnourished and dehydrated. He told them, "You can't arrest a ghost. I don't exist." His Cotard's was so severe, he'd also developed Capgras delusion, another rare condition where you think your loved ones have been replaced by imposters. He believed his family were actors pretending to be his family, and he was a dead man being forced to play along with their charade. So what causes Cotard syndrome? That's the terrifying part. We don't fully know. It's extremely rare, maybe a few hundred documented cases worldwide. It's often triggered by brain injury, strokes, trauma, tumors damaging the parietal or frontal lobes. Severe depression, particularly treatment-resistant depression with psychotic features. Neurological diseases, Parkinson's, dementia, multiple sclerosis. Drug reactions, some medications or drug withdrawals. Infections, rarely brain infections or autoimmune conditions. But even with these triggers, doctors don't understand why some people develop Cotard's and others don't. Why does one person with a brain injury recover normally while another becomes convinced they're dead? Current theory focuses on disconnection. There's a part of your brain, the anterior cingulate cortex and related regions, that constantly monitors your body's state and creates your sense of being alive. It processes signals from your organs, your movements, your emotions. When this system breaks down, you get a horrible mismatch. Your body is functioning, but your brain can't feel it. You're disconnected from your own existence. Imagine this right now. You feel alive because your brain is receiving constant feedback. Your heart beats. You feel it. You breathe. You sense it. You move. You experience it. This feedback creates your feeling of being alive, being real, being you. Now imagine all that feedback stops. You look at your hand moving but feel no ownership of it. Your heart beats but you can't sense it. You're watching your body like a spectator, completely detached. Your brain, trying to make sense of this impossible situation, comes to the only logical conclusion it can. I must be dead. That's why I can't feel anything. That's why nothing seems real. That's Cotard's syndrome, a prison where you're trapped watching your body move while being absolutely certain you don't exist. Treatment is difficult. Antidepressants sometimes help, but often don't. Antipsychotics can reduce delusions in some patients. Electroconvulsive therapy (ECT) has been the most effective treatment in severe cases. It seems to reset the malfunctioning brain circuits. But ECT is controversial, frightening to patients, and doesn't always work. And here's the cruelest part. Some patients with Cotard syndrome starve themselves to death, not because they want to die. They believe they're already dead. They stop eating because, from their perspective, corpses don't need food. By the time they're hospitalized, they're severely malnourished. Some die not from the syndrome itself, but from its consequences: starvation, dehydration, neglect of life-threatening medical conditions. One documented case from France, a 69-year-old woman with Cotard's refused all food and water for weeks. She told doctors, "I'm already dead." Food is for the living. Stop trying to feed a corpse. Despite being force-fed through tubes, she remained convinced she was deceased. She eventually died of complications from malnutrition. The autopsy showed nothing physically wrong with her brain structure, but functionally, her brain had stopped recognizing her as alive. Cotard's also intersects with other rare syndromes. Some patients have both Cotard's and Capgras, believing loved ones are imposters. The combination is nightmarish. You believe you're dead, and everyone you knew has been replaced by strangers pretending to care about a corpse. Other patients develop Fregoli delusion, believing different people are actually the same person in disguise. Imagine being convinced you're dead, your family are imposters, and everyone you meet is actually one person stalking you. That's the hell some patients live in. There's also a connection to depersonalization derealization disorder, a condition where you feel detached from yourself in reality, but Cotard's is more extreme. Depersonalization makes you feel like you're watching yourself from outside. Cotard's makes you believe you don't exist at all. Let me tell you about one more case that shows just how bizarre this syndrome can be. A man in his 30s, after a suicide attempt, developed Cotard's. But his delusion took a unique form. He believed he was dead, but only during certain times of day. In the morning he'd insist he was alive. By afternoon, he'd start saying he was dead. By evening he was a corpse. The next morning the cycle would repeat. Doctors were baffled. How can someone believe they're dead? Only part of the day, the patient explained. At night I die. In the morning I resurrect. It happens every day. His brain, damaged by the suicide attempt, had created a delusion tied to his circadian rhythm. After months of treatment, the delusion faded, but he said he still sometimes wonders late at night whether he's really alive. Cotard syndrome also raises philosophical questions. What does it mean to feel alive? We take consciousness for granted, the sense that we exist, that we're real, but Cotard shows that this feeling isn't automatic. It's generated by your brain, and when the brain malfunctions, that feeling can disappear. You can be biologically alive, heart beating, lungs breathing, but feel completely dead inside, not metaphorically dead, literally dead. There's also the question of reality and delusion. When we say Cotard's patients are deluded, we mean they believe something objectively false, but from their perspective, they're telling the truth. Their subjective experiences of being dead. Who's to say they're wrong about their own experience? If you feel dead with such conviction that no evidence can change your mind, in what sense are you alive? This isn't just philosophical. It affects treatment. You can't just tell a Cotard's patient, you're alive. Look at the evidence. Because evidence doesn't work when your brain is fundamentally misinterpreting reality. It's like trying to convince someone their eyes are lying when they look at an optical illusion. The illusion is what they see. Similarly, being dead is what Cotard's patients experience. One psychiatric paper described Cotard's as one of the rarest and most distressing delusions in psychiatry. Distressing for patients obviously, but also for families. Imagine watching your mother, father, child insist they're dead. They're sitting right in front of you, talking to you, but claiming they're a corpse. How do you respond? How do you help someone who's convinced their existence has ended? Some families try humor. If you're dead, how are you talking? But the patient has an answer. I don't know. Maybe I'm a ghost. Logic doesn't work. Love doesn't work. Nothing penetrates the delusion. Today, Cotard syndrome is classified as a symptom of other conditions, usually severe depression or psychosis, rather than a disease itself. The DSM-5, the Psychiatric Diagnostic Manual, doesn't list it as a separate disorder, but specialists argue it should be recognized independently because its specific features require specific treatment approaches. Research into Cotard's has slowed because it's so rare. Most psychiatrists will never encounter a case in their entire career. There are no large studies, no drug trials specifically for Cotard's. Treatment is based on case reports and small studies. We're still learning. But here's why Cotard's matters beyond its rarity. It reveals something fundamental about consciousness. It shows that your sense of being alive, something that feels so obvious, so undeniable, is actually fragile. It's a construct your brain maintains constantly, and when that construction breaks down, you can lose the very feeling of existence itself. Graham, the Scottish man who thought he was in hell, after years of treatment his Cotard's gradually faded. His brain scans showed increasing activity in the damaged regions. Slowly he started accepting he might be alive. Today he's recovered, but he says he'll never forget what it felt like to be absolutely certain he was dead. It wasn't a thought, he said, it was knowledge, like knowing the sky is blue. I knew I was dead, and nothing could convince me otherwise. That's Cotard's syndrome. A condition so rare most people have never heard of it. A condition so bizarre it sounds like fiction, but it's real. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is walking, talking, breathing, and absolutely convinced they're dead. Their family is begging them to eat. Doctors are running tests, but nothing will change their mind. Because when your brain tells you you're dead, you're living in a reality where existence itself has ended, and there's no escape from that nightmare except hoping that somehow, someday the brain will repair itself and let you feel alive again. Until then, you're one of the walking dead. Not a zombie, not a ghost, just a human being trapped in the most horrifying delusion possible, the certainty that you no longer exist. And the cruelest part, you're aware enough to suffer from it.